views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence with Claudette Rowley. Conversations that are transforming the world of culture and business. Claudette brings fresh, innovative perspectives that push the boundaries of what organizational cultures can and should be. Learn how to catalyze your organization's workforce into an authentic, intentional, and financially successful culture. Now here's your host, Claudette Rowley.
Hi, everybody. This is Claudette Rowley, and you are listening to Cultural Brilliance, the DNA of organizational excellence on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience some groundbreaking ways to transform your company's culture. Twice each month, we have some of the foremost experts on organizational culture and leadership, helping you understand how to make a brilliant culture the rule rather than the exception. Today, I am really excited and honored to introduce our guest. Our guest is Bawa Jain, and he is the UN Secretary General for the World Council of Religious Leaders. He is also the co-founder of the Center for Responsible Leadership, which we'll be talking about more today. Bawa is a visionary leader in the interfaith movement throughout the world and has committed his life to finding ways that the worldwide religious and spiritual communities can work together as allies with the UN on peace, poverty, and environmental initiatives. Welcome, Bawa.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudette, for having me.
Oh, I'm really happy you're here. I'm looking forward to our conversation and learning more about the center you've created.
Me too. I'm very excited and very passionate about this new initiative.
So I guess the place to start is talking about the center. So for folks listening who haven't heard about your new initiative, what is the Center for Responsible Leadership?
Well, first of all, I'll make a pitch in for go to www.thecrl.org. Gives you a brief overview of the center. And the center has really evolved through the multitude years of experience that I've had dealing with leadership at the highest level. Mm-hmm. Whether it be political, religious, business, civic leaders, you name it. And I've been motivated, especially with the state of partisanship and the terrible divide in our Congress, in our politics in Washington. I say this because the USA is the leader of the world, of the free world, and it will be for the foreseeable future. The world looks up to the United States of America. This is the greatest country, and I do not wish to be anywhere else but here. And when I see this state of dysfunction and this terrible divide which is taking place, we have to do something. So that's what motivated the creation of the center. And the Center for Responsible Leadership really is, we're not here to judge you whether you're a responsible leader or not. We will ask you simple 3 questions, and you be the judge whether you are a responsible leader or not. The first is, do you make decisions based on the future or the present? Do you make decisions out of conviction or convenience? Mm-hmm. Test the last part that says, are those decisions constructive or destructive? Now you be the judge.
I love you said something that really struck me is that we're not here to judge you whether you're a responsible leader. And you're actually, it sounds like from those 3 questions, you're asking leaders to really reflect to themselves and make that determination.
Absolutely. And if in our opinion we feel you do not meet the criteria, then I hope certain time we can call you on and have a good dialogue on what we might hope that you will do differently.
Absolutely. And because I think some of when you mentioned partisanship and what's happening in Washington, in the U.S., some of it, I mean, it's a very complicated issue, of course, but when we boil it down to this partisanship and this judgment of whether people are right or wrong, whether they, depending on what you believe and who you're aligned with, it's very refreshing that you're coming at it from a completely different perspective and not actually replicating this partisanship that we're trying to move away from.
This is not what the people elected officials for, not to go and create a divide and just be battling with each other and trying to bring each other down. Come on, for Christ's sake, guys, let's get our act together and work for the common good of the whole country. Indeed, the whole world.
Sounds good to me. Absolutely. So one thing you talk about, along with the Center, as and aligned with the Center for Responsible Leadership, is the erosion of trust, right? Which is something that really struck me. It's something I talk about a lot in my work on culture, but we've had this erosion of trust. And I'm curious what, from your perspective, what are some of the causes of it? I know it's complicated, but what have you seen?
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. And I think the World Economic Forum brought out this report quite a while ago that the number one issue in the world is the erosion of trust and how do we work to restore it. There are many factors, and primarily among them, I think, is personal interests oftentimes trump the larger interest of whether it's your corporation or whether it is your home or even the country that you serve. And oftentimes we are not making decisions in the larger interest of the community. That's one. And second, look at it from a business perspective, corporate sector, because I heard you mention about corporations before, is that the CEOs are so tied into declaring quarterly results that oftentimes you can't fault them that they make decisions out of convenience to reflect that the balance sheet is going to be attractive to the shareholders. Now, is that the right way to do it? I certainly don't think so. Several years ago, I was with my friend, the former CEO of Nestle, Peter. And I talked to Peter and he says, Bawa, I do not declare quarterly results. If the shareholders have trust, they have to wait and see what is our results, financial performance at the end of the year. I said, even at the end of the year, that's too short a period, 12 months. Now you take it to a political side. You get elected and all you want to do for the next term that you are elected is work to see how you can be re-elected.
Right.
In that environment, you are bound to make compromises. Now, those things do not build trust in the long term with the people. So people often will see that these people are just making decisions and conducting themselves based on a time frame either to be elected or to see that the balance sheets are very healthy, very looking very attractive to the shareholders. I don't think that should be the measure of how we conduct ourselves. Whether we get elected or not, again, say from a political point of view, your decisions must be based in the larger interest to serve the constituency that has elected.
Absolutely. And when personal interests are trumping, larger interests, it makes me think of a question that I love, which is really simple but powerful, which is what is best for everyone versus, what is best for me, what is best for my department, what is best for my company, what is best for, any particular entity, but what is really best for everyone here? And it sounds like that's what you're getting at, right?
I'm not naive to think that one decision will be beneficial to everybody on the planet. Mm-hmm. But I think the largest amount of people should think that it is a right decision and a wise decision. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm not, utopian in my thinking that everybody can be, it has to be pragmatic. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I hope that you can reflect on your dealings for the day and sleep with a clear conscience that you have done your best and in the larger interest, and not be having these, nagging thoughts of, I compromised myself there or here, I did not do this right or wrong. Try and minimize that. Some of it is inevitable, that happens, but can we learn from those mistakes or those experiences and not let them become repetitive in our conduct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this question, what's best for everyone, I view it as it's a lens to look through. So yes, not literal, because no decision will be best for everyone, right? There's no decision that everyone will like, but moving it outside of myself, right, into looking at things in a much bigger platform, which is what you're, I think, talking about, right? How do we make decisions that really focus on the future and are constructive?
Absolutely. Just take God Almighty. You think that everybody will agree to any decision which God Almighty makes? Right.
Right.
Judging from experience and looking at all the conflicts and wars in the name of religion, I don't think so. So we call upon religious leaders also to rise above their own following, about their own interests, whether it is for serving their own community or just taking care of their own little congregation. But see what is the larger interest of all the people in that community, whether they follow Christianity or Islam or Judaism or Hinduism or Buddhism or Jainism. Each one is entitled to follow what they feel works for them or what they are inclined towards. Let's just have a bit of mutual respect for each other, can we?
I think that we can, right? It's completely and entirely possible.
It comes down to each one person. Nobody outside. It is up to each one.
Mm-hmm. And also, I was thinking of the op-ed piece in Newsweek, written by your co-founder about the center, and I'm forgetting his name. Can you remind us, please?
Yeah, His Excellency Dr. Muhammad Abdullah Al-Karim Al-Isa, and
Thank
Dr. Al-Isa is originally from Saudi Arabia. He's a former Minister of Justice. He is currently the Secretary General of the Muslim World League, which is the largest body serving the Muslim communities around the world. And for me, he's just been a breath of fresh air. His thinking, his conviction, his decision-making, and the positions that he's taking. So just take, for instance, who would think that one of the most influential Muslim leaders of the world from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, just, to tell you that every Muslim, the 1.8 billion in the world, aspires to go to the Mecca and Medina, the two holiest sites. So that influence of Saudi Arabia cannot be matched by any other Muslim country. It is unique only to the kingdom. And he's coming out and after all these years, finally saying, how can you deny the Holocaust? This is a reality. This must never be allowed to happen again. Now that's a breath of fresh air. That takes courage. That's boldness. And I think that's the way we must go.
Yeah, it was an absolutely a breath of fresh air, as you said, and really looking at that much higher level picture of peace, right? Absolutely. And coming together and building community.
Absolutely. He speaks with a strong conviction, and he's very clear in his thinking. He elaborates even further when you sit with him. That, remember this whole thing, the notion of kafir and the infidels. He said there are no infidels. If you're a believer, you're a believer, whether it is Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or Buddhism or any belief. So we cannot be in judgment to say that you're an infidel. It's, the problem is a few misguided people who are misusing or abusing their religious texts for their own personal interests. Those are the people who are causing the conflicts in the world. And, I don't say that they're doing it intentionally. Sometimes I think they are. But oftentimes it comes out of a position of ignorance. They do not know enough. Take for instance any of these incidents of in Brussels, those people who had perpetrated those attacks in France. Those people, to my mind, were not real adhering Muslims because they operated a bar. They were using drugs, alcohol within that bar. Now, Islam strictly forbids that. How can they call themselves Muslims? They cannot. But yet, when the media has reported it's all Islamic terrorism.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the ignorance and the misrepresentation, right?
Absolutely.
Of how, right.
Yeah, and it doesn't help, it doesn't help now since the last 2 years, since this president was elected. I never heard this notion of fake news. Come on, guys. The news is the backbone of our democracy and of global, holding people accountable. Don't discount that and discredit media and try to box it and put fake news and just try and create doubts everywhere. That just isn't healthy and it is wrong. It helps only erode trust. It does not help build trust. From people who are in positions of authority and leadership, you are held to a higher standard of accountability. You must not and cannot take these kind of positions.
No, and actually, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into that a little bit more. You are listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you searching? Looking for a sign? A message you need to hear? From the great unknown, from the most mysterious place that is the most familiar to your soul in the depths of who you are. The universe put someone here to talk to, someone God gave a blessing to, that you may find insight with. TheAngelLady.net, 1-800-323-1790.
Calling all ladies. Are you struggling with neck, back, shoulder pain, or postural issues? You actually might have a related bra problem. Talk to Maria Monti at the Healthy Bra Company. She is a professional postural therapist who offers custom-fitted, custom-altered bras in 2,500 size combinations specific to your body type, shape, size, anatomical features, and breast weight. Call Maria today to find out more at 360-815-3205.
What is holding you back from living the life you were meant to live? Why is it vital to believe in something bigger than yourself? Are you in physical or emotional pain? Tune in monthly to Vibrant Purposeful Living. Awaken the vibrant life within you with Lou Paradise and Dr. Pat on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Lou's passion is to help everyone experience positive solutions for life. Find out more about Lou with Vibrant Purposeful Living at LouParadise.com.
If you have been struggling with fear and anxiety, you know how debilitating these emotions can be. You constantly doubt yourself, you can't make decisions, and feel more and more insecure and stuck. Dr. Friedman Schaub's book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution, will provide you with the insights and tools to break through these challenges. Through a step-by-step process, Dr. Schaub explains how to resolve the subconscious root causes of fear and anxiety and build a strong foundation of inner peace and confidence. Visit www.thefearandanxietysolution.com and get your copy now.
Order your copy of Dr. Friedman Schaub's The Fear and Anxiety Solution today. Visit thefearandanxietysolution.com for more information.
The Truth is Funny. Shift Happens with Colette Marie Steffen is excited to welcome Karen Benton as a monthly guest host. Tune in on the third Wednesday of each month at 8 a.m. Pacific Time to regain confidence and trust in your capacity to create change in your life, your health, your family, and your well-being. Karen Benton is a mother, nurse practitioner, certified body talk practitioner, Franklin Method instructor, and owner of Limitless Living LLC. For more information about Karen, visit KarenBenton.com.
We're back on Cultural Brilliance, the DNA of Organizational Excellence. I'm Claudette Rowley, and if you're just joining us today, my guest is Bawa Jain, and he is the UN Secretary General for the World Council of Religious Leaders. He's also the co-founder of a brand new center called the Center for Responsible Leadership, which is what he and I have been talking about. So Bawa, right before we went to break, you mentioned that, this idea of leaders being held, and we know this, right, to a much, much higher standard. And if they're not held to that standard and they don't hold themselves accountable, they're really eroding trust. So a question I had for you is, from your experience, what stops leaders from holding themselves to these higher standards?
Before I answer that, Claudette, just a clarification that in my title, which you mentioned, I'm the founding Secretary General of the World Council of Religious Leaders. I think it's please know it's an independent body. It's not an official body of the United Nations, even though it was born from the Millennium Summit at the UN in the year 2000, of which I served as Secretary General. Just a point of clarification.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Now, getting to this question, ultimately, I think we are all human beings. And oftentimes, when we are elected or assume positions of influence and power, sometimes I wonder whether we realize that we are going to be judged to a higher standard, that we are under constant public scrutiny. And it takes an enormous amount of patience and resilience and conviction to conduct yourselves to a higher standard. For me, first and foremost is, when you are elected, you have to just understand that your primary job is to serve the people who have elected you or appointed you to that position. You cannot assume that you're on top of them, dictating to them and telling them what to do and follow. That is just a wrong principle. Yeah, and to me, you just oftentimes make decisions which you, in a petty interest, whether it's personal or whether it is your affiliation politically, or whether it is just to the identity, whether it's a corporation or the religion or other interests that you represent. That decision-making from people in position of leadership must be more about the collective good, not the individual good.
Definitely. And I think too, it's not taking that easy way out, right? It's saying, even though this might be the harder road, this is the road of high accountability. This is the road of building trust, right? With the people that elected me or the people that work for me.
Absolutely. And if a person is not willing to be held to a higher standard, I don't think that they should pursue those careers.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you on that. For sure. So one of the things I know that the center is focused on, Center for Responsible Leadership, is this idea of building a new world without destroying the old. And I was really interested in that, because we hear a lot of talk about building a new world, but we don't hear a lot of talk about let's do it without destroying the old. Can you tell us more about that?
What we are talking about is nothing which is new. These principles have existed since eternity. It seems somewhere down the road we've forgotten that there is another way also, and all we are seeking to do is reminding people to see what is in the larger interest. Mm-hmm. For me personally, looking at the state of affairs in the world, what I felt was there's a vacuum of responsible leadership. Now let me just clarify: there is no globally agreed definition of responsible leadership. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's why we asked it more as a question and had each one of you be the judge for yourselves first, whether you are, in your own opinion, a responsible leader or not. For me personally was that looking at the state of affairs, that we have to do something and to bring it to the people's consciousness. I believe in the inherent good of every individual. It's just that bringing it to their awareness and to their conscience. And I believe that a majority of them will conduct themselves in a positive, responsible way. This is my conviction. I may be idealistic, you may think. I'm an absolute optimist. I'm not a pessimist. If I was a pessimist, I would not be doing what I'm doing. And the other conviction I have is that I even though we want to measure, what tangible outcomes are there within, say, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years or 20 years, I'm not attached to the outcomes annually or something, but I know that if we do things right now, the results will come, whether it's in my lifetime or not. So I decided to take on something very small. And the small thing is, all we seek to do is change the world, transform the world. I'm going to keep working for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, plenty of work, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Life has to have a meaning and purpose, Claudette. Mm-hmm. I need to feel comfortable with myself that I am trying to do my part.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. I've had, how do I contribute? How do I contribute to the larger good, right? How can I use my talents and the things that I can bring forth and contribute? I completely understand where you're coming from there.
I will just add one more thing to that, Claudette.
Sure.
No person should feel that they're inadequate. Mm-hmm. And consider that, I cannot do this. This is too big. Nobody is here to judge you, how big or small. Take whatever initiative, whatever action you can to transform. Small steps. Be a role model first to your own families, to your own communities. Be a person who is held to a higher standard. Let them be the judge and see that you are conducting yourselves in a way which you can, first of all, for yourself feel happy and proud of, but also the people who are your loved ones and people who care about you, respect you, also feel that, yes, that is the way I would also like to conduct myself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Again, this, when you said, no one is inadequate, right? We're all here to contribute, and there's no one that's here to judge you. So it doesn't have to be it's not about what's big or small. And such an important point. And I feel like, and my experience has been, especially in the past few years, people feel very judged. That's a trend I've noticed. Yeah.
The thing is, we are under constant scrutiny. The way the systems are set up today is that if I have one principle in this. If you feel that you are doing something which you don't want people to know about, you better not do it, because it will come out. One way
that's right.
Come out. So if you think that you can get away with doing something, you're being very naive. I hate to say it, but please forgive me. Then you're being stupid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is going to come out. We've seen this again and again and again. So, for instance, the social media. I mean, this is an amazing tool that we have to communicate beyond traditional media, whereas in split second across the world, right? But that comes with an enormous responsibility. Youngsters, especially, I was speaking at a convention for conference for young people many years ago. It was in Zurich. And I said, you are very quick to whether get onto a Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat, but be aware that what you put out there becomes your DNA. It can never be taken back. So exercise a lot of judgment and restraint before you post something, because that can come back to haunt you. As you know, today, you apply for a job, one of the first things that the people do is go and search what has been your social media activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what you were saying. It was making me think of what would happen if social media was only used for good. Right? It's a powerful tool. Yeah.
I would hope. But, in this also, with the recent things that you've seen, sometimes we create systems which become very difficult to manage, it seems. Look at all that happened in our elections, and with all the stories about the manipulations and the fake news things or misrepresentations, and these companies, whether it was a Facebook or a Google or something, they were not equipped to manage that, it seems. Even Twitter, even the other social media channels. So I think there needs to be greater mechanisms to see that people are not allowed to misuse and abuse this. And if something happens, bring it to a minimum. All this violent extremism and terrorism and radicalism also is being promoted, and they're using the social media as tools for recruiting. We ought to do better than that. This is not going to help our communities and our countries and indeed the world. So we have to put in checks and balances to see that these things are minimized, if not eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, used differently, right? And used for good. Yeah, right. Used for their original purpose.
Yes, absolutely. I think they were very well intentioned and motivated. Somewhere, I think business interests or other interests trumped what the original concepts were. And I think we have to go back to those. Let these be tools to serve the community.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, let these be tools to serve the community, and then they completely transform into something else. And it seems that we need more and more of that, right? Let's look at the tools to serve our communities, whether it's a community of 2,000 people or 2 million people. But what serves our communities?
Absolutely. For that, I think that each one has to ask this question. I go back to the 3 questions that I asked. Are you making decisions based on the present or the future? Take that question and look at the current debate, and with all this crazy weather that we are facing, and yet there are people who deny climate control.
I know.
Take the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which were negotiated. And by the way, I may not agree with everything that the United Nations does. Do I think it's perfect? No. Do you think there's room to reform? Absolutely. But this is the one global body that we have. And this is the one platform that the 193 member nations can come together and have some kind of policies or framework which are in the larger interest of the global community. There is no other place where you can do this. And these people came together, drafted and agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals. And by the way, when they agreed, these are the basic minimum. This is not our highest aspiration. And yet we cannot even meet those. There were the Millennium Development Goals which came up in the year 2000. 15 years later, they saw we had regressed from that rather than advanced. And today, look what the climate is happening. Crazy weather. Arctic temperatures in Chicago were like minus 50, minus 60, and in New York everywhere. And now the storms, such heavy snowfall in Seattle, things which are not normal, or whether it's the storms happening, the tsunamis, and yet we deny it. I think then we are fooling ourselves if we say that these things are not real.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And I'd like to dig into this a little bit more after we take a quick break. So I'm Claudette Rowley, and you're listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio. When we come back, we're going to talk more about climate change and some of the key issues we're dealing with around the world. Stay tuned.
Your favorite Transformation Talk radio shows are now on Spotify. What? Simply search out your favorite host or show by name, tap the subscribe button, and boom! With over 150 million active monthly users on Spotify, Transformation Talk Radio is thrilled to expand our reach so you never have to miss an episode. Well, what the heck are you waiting for? Log into Spotify and subscribe now.
Curious about the meaning of life? Do you want to deepen your spiritual practice? The School for Esoteric Studies offers online training to spiritual seekers from all paths of life and individual coaching. Our courses synthesize Eastern and Western spiritual traditions based on meditation, study, and service applied to everyday life. The school also organizes group meditations each year to benefit humanity. Whether you're just beginning to reflect on the spiritual side of your life or are a more experienced spiritual seeker, the school warmly welcomes you to join our group. To learn more about our courses and services, please visit esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net. Take your own journey with the angels with Claire Candy Huff's Heaven Sent Guided Angel Meditation CD. Letting go of concerns and living in the now. This beautiful CD walks listeners through practical exercises to help free them from the burdens, worries, and concerns of daily life.
Walking a quarter of the way across the bridge, you see a bright, emerald green light and sense a loving presence. This is Archangel Raphael's green healing energies, nourishing and revitalizing you. Take a moment now to bathe in this green healing light.
Giving you much more than just relaxation and stress release, this wonderfully narrated CD provides vivid visualization, soothing and inspiring music, and an angel's choir that will bring you peace, clarity, and a newfound awareness. Visit angelhealinghouse.com today.
Have you ever heard of the 90-10 rule? It goes like this. 90% of the time, no one is thinking of you. 90% of the time, everyone's thinking about themselves. And if you think of it like that, it takes the weight off, because now you're not being judged. I'm Megan Edge. I'd love for you to join me on Playing on the Edge Radio, Radical Change with Ease, with my co-host Dr. Pat on Transformation Radio FM.
We're back on Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley, here with my guest today, Bawa Jain, who is the co-founder of the Center for Responsible Leadership. Bawa, for folks who are interested in learning more about your work in the center, what's the best way for them to get that information?
Should I thank God for the World Wide Web? Please go visit www.thecrl.org. Once again, www.thecrl.org.
Perfect. Thank you. And so before we went to break, we were talking about, climate control, and you were talking about the Arctic temperatures in the Midwest and Seattle getting snow and all, these things shifting and changing around the world weather-wise, and yet we're still, not everyone's, 100% convinced climate change is for real, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
It's not really a laughing matter at all, but sometimes it's either a laugh or cry, right?
Yeah.
And with this, so why don't people believe this? Any insight into that?
I hate to say it, ignorance.
Ignorance, okay.
One of the things, and I don't fault the people for it. I think that, while all the science exists for it, we have not succeeded in translating into a language which a common average person can understand.
Right.
All the facts, statistical facts. So one of the things which I think the United Nations is great at is coming together and discussing and agreeing on policy. Where I think it needs the greatest help is on implementing those policies and decisions or the frameworks. So this is where people like us, you and me, everybody needs to pick up and take these documents and convert them into a language which an average common person can understand, which is relevant to their own communities. If you produce volumes of books and you have all these reports, which are very essential, wonderful, the tremendous work of the IPCC, those 2,000 plus scientists who've just dedicated their lives into this, we are not doing them justice if we cannot translate all that they have discovered and put into those reports into a language which has relevance and meaning to you, on the average person on the street, and to your communities.
Yeah, that is such an incredibly important point, right? How do you put this in everyday language, this information? And not only that, like you said, it's relevant to where I live. It's relevant to where, someone else lives in the country or around the world. And you can say, oh, this is the impact. Oh, this is why we're experiencing, what we need to do differently.
This is exactly one of the motivations of the center. We want to be able to bring in those leaders. And at our inaugural summit at the end of April at the United Nations, April 29 and 30, we want to bring about 100 of these people and see which sector they are willing to take responsibility on. And then they become the trailblazers in that. Whether it is a corporation who says, listen, I'm active in this country, in this community. I'm going to pick up this SDG and I'm going to translate into what is needed in that community and have that being disseminated through my networks. Wonderful. Or take a political leader, say, in my constituency, I'm going to see say just the representatives for the Seattle area. They would pick up these reports. They'll say, what are the things that we can do differently in the Seattle area? And they start to implement certain things. So each one of us, just imagine, we have 535 elected members. If they took up one part of it doesn't take much. And they're focused on that. The change that we are seeking is possible. That will is not there. And I think that's where we need to work on to get these people to be more aware of and take responsibility and leadership.
Yeah, you said something I think incredibly key here, which is it's the issue of will, right? My feeling is we have all the information we need, all the resources we need to solve the world's problems, right? That's not even an issue.
Absolutely.
It's about will, and then translating and communicating so the information becomes relevant to people in a way that hits them, and it hits them in the heart. Like, oh wow, we got to do something about this.
For me is this. We need to start talking about what are the key indicators or key ingredients for responsible leadership. And start educating our children from the kindergarten level, from the primary level, so that by the time they come into positions of whether it's leadership or employment or whatever they are pursuing, that this is part of their DNA. They will conduct themselves in that way. That's what I'm seeking in the long term. In the short term, what we want to do is have identified the people who are the leaders, the trailblazers in the world. And one thing I've discovered is these people who've been successful and who have that kind of passion love to give advice. We want to be a conduit to have the people who are seeking advice be matched up with the people who are willing to impart that advice in mentorship and training.
Right. Because that's often there's a disconnect there, right? People who love to give advice are not always reaching the people who are seeking it.
Absolutely. I've been blessed to have people who have really helped me along the way.
Uh-huh.
And, every one of us comes to crossroads in their own lifetimes. Is there somebody who at that crossroad can guide me onto the path which would minimize the difficulties and the obstacles that I will, encounter? That's what we seek.
And one thing I'm curious about is how, just going back to the past a little bit, how did you earlier in your life get involved in this kind of work? What led you to this? To your larger work in the world?
One of the greatest blessings in my life is having a spiritual father, as we refer to my guru in my life since I think he was responsible for me physically being born into the family that I was born into, because he was already close to the family. So I was blessed to have been under his tutelage from the earliest years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Acharya Sushil Kumar. He's a Jain monk. And I wish everybody in their life can have some mentor like that. Your life will be transformed, I can assure you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. It's true. Anyone with a mentor is so transformational. And yet we know, right, a lot of people don't end up having one.
He taught me one thing, it's a guru, a guru's job is to show you the way. The journey you have to undertake yourself. So it's just having those people in your lifetime at different times showing you the way. And you have enough tools within yourself through the upbringing that you know then what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know how to make those decisions for yourself, right? Use that sort of that form of judgment to know what's right for you.
Again, going back to, do not feel inadequate. Okay. Look at Martin Luther King, one man, Nelson Mandela, one man, or Mahatma Gandhi, one person. Look what they did. They started with a small idea, had the conviction to see it through and develop it. And look, it's transformed the world. I mean, I look to especially President Mandela, who I was honored and blessed to meet. And after 27 years of being in Robben Island in the prison, he comes out and the first words he utters is, as I was saying the other day, in his terrible experience of those 27 years at Robben Island, it was just the other day. And he got on to look what he became after that, became the moral conscience of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us is capable of doing that. Nobody's here again to judge you. Do something, people.
And I think that message is so, in and of itself, so transformational, right? If we, any of us could have been Nelson Mandela, for example. Any of us could have been Martin Luther King, right? Is your message? Any of us could have.
Yeah.
We all have that capacity for greatness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks don't really see that in themselves.
So I constantly tell everybody that everybody is a leader.
Yeah.
We need to create the environment for each of the people to have the highest potential realized through the different initiatives, through the mentorships, through the encounters. Mm-hmm. Let's work to create an environment that each one's highest potential is realized.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think it makes that in and of its, if everyone realized their potential, right, as you know, our world would be completely different than it is now.
Absolutely. And that, we have to have the courage that there is transformation needed, whether it's an educational system, whether it's the environment that we operate in. We have to have the foresight and the conviction to engage in that reform process and have these, whether it's the education field or the environment, be, something that we are aspiring towards, not something that we are, this was and has been. This is not relevant to what I'm trying to pursue now. Ask the people going through professional degrees, and then ask them in their work environment how much of what they learned actually applied to or meant something in those experiences. And the response is dismal, honestly. And I think we need to reflect that this educational process also needs a reform. Similarly, the political process. I was hearing the new Representative Ocasio-Cortez citing on what the responsibilities are of the congressmen, on Congress people elected, and what they can get away with. It was horrible to see that they could absolutely be funded and be a front for all the interest, and yet there's nothing disbarring them from being elected. And then what was worse for me was saying, and the president is held to an even lesser standard, which is just the opposite of what it should be.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. You're listening to Cultural Brilliance Radio with Claudette Rowley and my guest, Bawa Jain. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about what it's like to be holding people to standards that aren't high enough, and also more about human rights. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Miss any shows during the week? Don't worry, we've got you covered. With the free Transformation Talk Radio app, you'll have access to all of the past week's shows in the palm of your hand. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio anywhere you go with our free app for any of your devices. Check out our app in the App Store and Google Play Store today.
Disease, one of the most dreaded words in our vocabulary. Hi, I'm Mary Jane Mack. Did you know traditionally we have viewed disease as a degenerative process? Disease is better understood when we view it as dis-ease in the human body. Dis-ease means without ease. Health is not merely the absence of disease. It's when every part of the body works together effortlessly, relaxed and at ease. It's that relaxed state that lets energy flow in waves through and around the entire body. Every organ has an electrical charge, and when overcharged or undercharged, dis-ease occurs. And it is an effort to go through our day. We are able to determine the exact dis-ease of the body and design a specific solution to correct the nutritional imbalance. Contact us at 888-777-4232. That's 888-777-4232. And visit us at maryjanemack.com.
Tune in to The Truth is Funny with Colette Steffen each Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on TransformationTalkRadio.com. This hit show will have you thinking outside the box and riding the wave of infinite potential. Join Colette on the Higher Self Network, inspiring listeners to shine their brilliance and ensure success while roaring with laughter as they recognize the humor of the giant cosmic joke. Visit TheTruthIsFunny.com.
How often do you find yourself wondering, why me? Learn a new shift in perspective to see how everything that takes place in your life is actually working for you and shifting you towards your own enlightenment. Tune in to Blank Enlightenment Radio with Misty Thompson each month on TransformationTalkRadio.com. For more, visit MistyMThompson.com. That's MistyMThompson.com.
Hi, we're back on Cultural Brilliance Radio. I'm Claudette Rowley. And right before the break, my guest Bawa Jain and I were talking about the fact that, that we have people, elected officials, even the president, right, who aren't held to the standards that they should be, right? They should be to do their jobs effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that's, when we see, of course, every day in the news, what that is doing to the outcomes we're getting, the results we're getting, our political process, right? We can see the impact of that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So that is another area of reform for sure. One of the things I wanted to make sure we spend a few minutes on, our time has just flown by today, is human rights. Human rights. And I know that is one of the areas that your Center for Responsible Leadership focuses on, and certainly you have in your work as well. What's the state of human rights that you're seeing throughout the world?
Let me just go back to, I think, one of the great success stories of the United Nations is the creation of the Declaration of Human Rights in 1948.
Yes.
And if you look at the Declaration of Human Rights, it's essentially a collection of the core values of our religious and faith traditions. And yet, how many of us actually reflect and say, this is what our religions and this is the way our system was set up, that we conduct ourselves, and what we measure ourselves by. So we have failed ourselves when we are not holding ourselves to those standards. Those are basic, standards of respect, love each other, nurture each other, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those simple commandments, simple teachings, we are just not following up on that. So when you look at the human rights across the world I'll tell you, you have to try and balance out the reality versus the perception. Yeah, in the free world, the democratic part of the world, we have evolved into a different set of values and standards that we conduct ourselves by. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that the people who are still not living in those democratic societies are having that expression of the will, and they have to suffer in that ways. One of our mechanism has to be of respect and restraint. We cannot be judgmental and impose our will onto those cultures. Rather, we have to engage them and work that ultimately they will be transformed. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes just condemning is not going to get the best reaction. Okay, we have to try and work with the system. And this is where the people's power, the soft power, is most effective on people-to-people level. So what we are seeking with the Center for Responsible Leadership is that people-to-people power, is the soft power that ultimately will be transformation.
And like you said, just condemning a human rights violation of some kind, right, isn't enough, right? It's important to come out and say it, and to say that's not acceptable and everything else that gets said. But there is something about, as you were saying, that soft power, the people to people. What happens when we see a group of people get together, just like the students that gathered after the horrible shooting in Florida, the Florida high school, right? And
just look at those lovely young heroes. Just brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. And I see that happening more and more and more, where there are people coming together, like, out of tragedy, unfortunately, often, but they're saying, this isn't acceptable. We are changing this, right? We are standing for something different. And not only saying it's not acceptable, they're also willing to do something about it, which I think is what you're talking about, right? With that soft power, that people to people kind of power.
Absolutely. In this, I have to, please, with all humility, request our lobbyists and the people, the power brokers, that could you please also, you have to pursue what you're doing, but can you also try and see what is in the larger interest of the global community? Mm-hmm. Not just to line pockets and build influence. The world is a lovely place for everybody. We don't have to go and destroy each other or condemn each other and push them down for us to thrive. That mentality and that mindset must change. The different lobby and different interests that govern our decision making. Okay, I understand that is happening, but can we try and move beyond that to see how we can be responsible leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if our mindset changes, like you said, we don't need to destroy each other or our planet for someone to come out on top. There's so much more available. We have, there's plenty of resources, ideas, will, and goodness available to create a planet that works for most people here, right?
Absolutely. And that has to be our aspiration. That has to be the ideal. That is something which we must strive towards and keep working towards that till we achieve it. And then I'm sure we will have some even more to do.
Right. We're never done. But yes, that there's that aspiration of holding out the vision and the possibility for folks who have forgotten that something better is actually possible here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing what I think motivates me most is that all these things that we are trying to discuss are possible.
Yes.
But again, going back to where is the will?
Where is the will? And I have one of my colleagues talks a lot about that too. He's like, we could do all this, the saying you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
Absolutely.
Is the will piece, right? We could do everything, but without the will. And so the will is really that leverage point for change.
Yeah, that's what we seek. So when you come to the inaugural Responsible Leaders Summit at the end of April, you'll see that the people that we are inviting are carefully selected, and it's not going to be a large gathering just for 100. But each one, in my opinion, has a story which can be helpful and inspire the others. And hopefully through the networks and media channels, the word can get out and we can source more and more leaders each year as we seek to bring them together.
That summit sounds really like an amazing event.
Actually, I don't call it as an event. For me, it's the beginning of a process.
Process. Thank you. Yeah, it's the start of a process.
Because if it is just going to be a summit and then nothing, then I am not interested, honestly. I want to believe that this is the beginning of a process, and which we are going to start to mobilize the larger, global change makers, as you will, or the people who have the similar ideologies, and see how we can complement each other, work together, and bring in those changes, incremental changes. I'm not seeking a sea change overnight. I'm not naive about that. Just incremental changes. That is enough. It'll be enough for me.
And that's how change works, doesn't it? So I would like to thank you so much, Bawa, for being on the show today and for sharing your vision, your ideas, and your passion with all of us.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, I would like to thank all of you, as always, for tuning into Cultural Brilliance Radio. We always have a great time. Please join me the second and fourth Fridays of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to the hit show Cultural Brilliance Radio, the DNA of organizational excellence with Claudette Rowley. Conversations that are transforming the world of culture and business. You can download this podcast and find out more about Claudette and her breakthrough work at ClaudetteRowley.com. Please contact Claudette and find out how you can create a brilliant culture.